Welcome to Top Shelf. My name's David Pierce, and this week we're talking about Google. So Google's biggest announcement is coming up through Motorola in the Moto X later this week. But a lot happened last week, too, from Motorola and Verizon and Google itself. So before we get too far in, let's take a look back at what happened last week. We figured this week was going to be the big one for Google. It's getting ready to launch the Moto X, which appears to be the first Motorola phone made with lots of Google's input. But last week may have been even more significant. It started on Tuesday, an event where no one really even talked about Google. It was Motorola and Verizon launching 3 new droids. The Droid Ultra, Max, and Mini are relatively normal droids, but they came with some hints of what Google's up to and what's coming. The new droids are always listening to you, always ready for your commands. Just say, "Okay, Google," now to wake up your phone and ask it a question. They have always-on displays, too, showing you notifications or the time without you ever needing to hit the power button. The horribly named Droid Zap definitely won't be a standard Android feature, at least not with that name, but it's a neat way to share photos of people around you. The 3 phones each have a reason for existence. One has long battery life, one is super thin, one is just the right size. Could Google and Motorola be working to make the Moto X all 3 in one phone? We'll find out soon enough. One thing we know for sure is that whatever comes next will run Android 4.3. Google announced the new version of its OS, still called Jelly Bean, at an event on Wednesday. Android 4.3 comes with a few new under-the-hood features, but also shows what the Android team is clearly focused on: games and tablets. There are more multiplayer games, more ways to track your achievements and scores, lots of new tablet apps in their own section of the Play Store, and a new tablet to play them all on. The Nexus 7 was Google's first great hardware play a year ago, and it announced a new $229 version this year as well. But that wasn't even Google's most interesting hardware. That designation goes to the Chromecast, the little dongle that sticks into the side of your TV and brings YouTube, Netflix, and your browser from almost any device to your television. It's like AirPlay, except it's $35 to buy, and the details are still really fuzzy. It's actually maybe more like the Nexus Q, except it's hopefully not terrible. So a few things are clearer now. Google's clearly focusing on games, it's focusing on tablets, and it's really focusing on your TV. And it's not Google Plus that's the spine of everything Google does anymore. It's Chrome. Chrome unites all your devices, and Google's hoping to unite even more with Chromecast. But there's still a lot left for Google to do, and a lot left for us to find out, like whether or not Chromecast is any good, or why on earth the Droid Ultra and Droid Max both need to exist. And are there even any surprises left for the Moto X? We'll find out. Okay, so big week, lots to talk about. So here to talk about all of it and more with me, Nilay Patel, managing editor of The Verge, and some call him the David Duchovny of technology.
I want to believe.
That's fine. We're just gonna keep right on going. Let's talk about Motorola. Let's start with them. So they were they preempted all this Google stuff you were there with me, and let's do some deep psychoanalysis of this event. It was the weirdest event ever.
Truly, it was more like a wedding or a bar mitzvah than a phone launch.
It kind of was. It was round tables. The guy got up for 6 minutes. And he was like, cell phones, and that was that.
I don't know. I honestly cannot tell you why some of these new droids exist when the Moto X is coming out.
Yeah.
Because some of the overlaps are enormous. I think the Droid Max, I understand why that exists.
Yeah, it's like 2 full days of battery life.
Yeah.
Done. There's your market.
And there are some serious compromises to get there, right? I mean, it's a very mid-range phone, right? It has a dual-core processor, it has a 720p display, but 2 days battery life. Right. So I get it. And the Max, I think, was a very popular product for Motorola and Verizon. But the Droid Mini,
yeah, I don't know that anybody wants
Ultra?
that phone. I feel like everybody thinks
what are you doing?
Somebody wants that phone, but nobody wants that phone.
The Moto X is supposed to be the same size. So there's a lot of how are you going to sell these phones and how they're going to be different.
And they've even shifted the Droid brand, right? Because it used to be the Android brand, and now they've sort of switched it.
It used to be the high-end flagship Verizon, and to their credit, it worked, right? I mean, it was. Until Samsung decided to throw money at Galaxy marketing, that was Android for people. Literally all of the money.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the biggest advertisers in the world. Samsung is one of the biggest advertisers in the world. And one brand and one carrier in one country can't compete with that global scale. Right. So it makes sense, but I think it's interesting that Verizon and Motorola have refocused it not to compete with the S4, not to compete with the One. In some ways, not even compete with the iPhone 5, even the specs are kind of the same, but to be much more mid-range.
Right.
Even the price points are the same.
But at the same time, it has some of the, I feel like some of the coolest Android features I saw this week were not from Google. They were at this event. So I don't know if that's Motorola or if it's Verizon. That can't be Verizon. Verizon can't possibly make decent software. There's no way.
I will,
But it's this relationship between Motorola and Google increasingly confuses
They don't
me.
talk to each other. I mean, I've talked to people at Google. I'm like, do you know what's going on in Motorola? They're like, I don't know anybody. And they literally they don't know each other.
So what's happening? So is Motorola advancing Android with, there's the Droid Zap, which is the worst named thing ever. But there's also,
They're not advancing
your
Android
phone
with that.
sits there and will show you notifications. You don't have to turn it on.
Yeah.
And you can talk to it and say, okay, Google now.
Right. I mean, that stuff is cool.
Where's that coming from?
I think that's coming from Motorola. I think that's them desperately trying to find ways to differentiate their phones from Samsung and HTC and LG and Sony and whoever else.
It kind of worked. It's
and
cool.
It's funny because what they've bet on is what we've been asking phone manufacturers to bet on, which is leave Android alone, like add in where it makes sense, and build great hardware. Right. And now, I don't know if Motorola's built great hardware. The more I think about these phones, the more, particularly the Ultra with the glossy back, it's pretty boring. The Max. God, these names are terrible. The Max is
the Ultra. The fact that the Max is better than the Ultra makes no sense to me. Just none.
And
here's the best phone ever,
and
then
the
what's
Mini
the other?
exists, and they all have the same specs. Like they're all 720p. They're all dual core processors. Right. Motorola made this big deal out of how they have a new 8x computing platform, and then just told some lies. And there's really no getting around it. They just told some lies about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically an off-the-shelf processor that they
it's an off-the-shelf
rebranded
processor, and
to
they
just
rebranded.
pretend is a thing.
And so I think they're trying to play at this game where they want to be really high end. They can't be.
Right.
And then they have this other flagship phone that's coming out.
Which we've been talking about for a year now.
Yeah.
And then they come out and they're like, here's all these other phones that you
that are probably
should not buy
features.
because this other one's coming out and it's going to be
so at the event they said it will be, I was like, why are you doing all this?
Yeah.
And the answer was, it will be very clear at the Moto X event what the plan is, like why the Moto X exists.
But yet they're doing it, they're owned by Google, and yet they're doing it on a now outdated version of Android.
Yeah, it's 4.2.2.
Good job, Motorola.
Well,
but you know what is it? You know what is it? This guy.
It's not 4.3.
This is 4.3.
Yeah, but who cares?
I do.
What?
I do.
Because you love Bluetooth Smart?
I do. So, all right, so we'll get to this. But this is the Nexus 7. I've had it. I reviewed it.
I completely
You think
disagree.
I'm crazy.
I think you're crazy.
We'll get to this. Let's check out the review real quick.
Fine.
This is David with The Verge, and this is Google's new Nexus 7. Last year, Google's first Nexus 7 immediately became the best Android tablet on the market. But in the last 12 months, it's become ploddingly slow and buggy and just outdated. So Google's back with another, this time for $229, bringing the device way up to date. It starts with the hardware, made by ASUS. The new Nexus 7 has a 7.02-inch 1920 by 1200 IPS display that is way better than the last model, or even something like the iPad mini. It has fantastic viewing angles and gorgeous color reproduction, and it's just insanely sharp. At 323 pixels per inch, it's good enough that you can even read tiny text. I could actually read a book through the screenshots in the Play Store. And everything from movies to books is just more pleasant to look at. The screen gets incredibly bright and absolutely destroys the battery when it's turned all the way up. But it's overall one of the best tablet displays I've ever seen. Maybe the best. Even while improving the screen, Google managed to make the Nexus 7 a little bit thinner and a lot lighter. It's a little taller now, and it feels a lot taller. The bezels on the sides are thinner than last year's model, but the top and bottom bezels are still big and fat. It makes the device feel kind of asymmetrical, which the off-center camera lens on the front doesn't help either. But the Nexus 7 is even more comfortable and usable in one hand than ever. It's still soft touch and comfortable, but it feels much more grown up somehow. I could see James Bond using this Nexus 7. Google and ASUS also added stereo speakers, which are great. No matter how you hold the new Nexus 7, you get genuine stereo sound that's pretty loud and pretty clear. There's a new 5-megapixel rear camera as well, but it's not very good or very interesting. For $229, you can only expect so much, but Google did make bigger promises this time. The new Nexus 7 runs on a faster processor and a GPU that Google says is more than 4 times as powerful. There's double the RAM now too, which is a big upgrade. And it's fast. Other than the fact that Google has somehow not figured out how to animate scrolling properly, there are basically zero performance issues with this Nexus 7. Games look great, even intensive ones, and the operating system flows smoothly. Part of that is definitely due to the fact that the Nexus 7 runs Android 4.3. It's still called Jelly Bean, but it does bring a few new things to the table. Restricted Profiles basically just gives you parental controls for the tablet. You can pick and choose which apps certain users can access. It's a feature lots of tablets have had, though. It's just now baked into the OS. One genuinely cool new feature is Play Games, which is essentially a not hideous Game Center or Xbox Live for Android. It tracks your achievements and high scores, shows you what your friends are playing, and so on. Google's talking a lot about tablet apps and how many of them look good and work well on the Nexus 7. There are definitely signs of life for the Android ecosystem here. Apps like Flipboard and Evernote and Pocket work great on a 7-inch device, and Netflix can now play in gorgeous 1080p. But there are still plenty of examples like Rdio, which is just a blown-up phone app and looks pretty bad. Particularly for game players, too, there are just many more great apps on iOS than on Android. But for most things, Android's caught up. And on a 7-inch device, even the blown-up phone apps don't look quite so terrible. The new Nexus 7 is far more powerful than the old. There's no question about that. But I'm still a little nervous. In our benchmark tests, its raw numbers are much better, but relative to the competition, they're about the same as the Nexus 7 was a year ago. I was hoping for insane, crazy power, so this tablet would be able to hang around for years, but that may not be the case. I guess we might just be stuck paying $229 a year forever, which does make the more expensive models, like the 32 gig model for $269, or 32 gigs plus LTE for $349, a much harder sell. Battery life is another thing that was odd about the old Nexus 7, at least the one I bought. It was great for a couple of months and then basically fell off a cliff. For now, the new model easily lasts through a full day of pretty heavy use, even with some gaming and movie watching, and it burns almost no battery on standby, which was not true of the Nexus 7 I bought a year ago. I'm hoping that holds up. So yes, I'm still a little worried about the future, but in some sense, such is the price of progress. And the Nexus 7 has such good build quality, such a gorgeous screen, and finally, such a good selection of tablet apps that for as long as the processor can hang around, this is going to be one of the best Android tablets on the market. Apple may well come out with an iPad mini with Retina display, and it may well continue to have a big ecosystem advantage, especially for gamers. But if you want a tablet that's great for reading, watching movies, browsing the web, and checking your email, the new Nexus 7 for all of $229 is pretty much unbeatable. Okay, so I like this tablet a lot, and you don't. Or you think you don't like it as much as I do.
On the inside, this is what I look like.
It's the David Duchovny of technology right there.
Right there. No, look, I think it's a great piece of hardware. Okay. I think Google has built a great piece of hardware. Yeah. I think the screen is spectacular.
Yeah.
I think
Chris said something to me this morning, or as I was putting up the review, he's like, I can't believe Asus beat Apple to a 7-inch Retina tablet. Which is true, and it's like, even if we're going to disagree on the software, but the hardware is great.
The screen is great. Really I think the bezels are stupid, just ridiculously stupid. And I have a real issue with on-screen buttons. I've decided.
Really?
I think that wasting actual display space for buttons is not useful.
So you'd rather the buttons be down at the bottom or below it?
I'd rather have that be used for content. And I hate the fact that Android's on-screen home button is under the spacebar.
But then everybody complains about how the buttons are like capacitive and not on the screen. That's like the pure Android way.
Yeah, that's just made up. Like, those people are crazy.
Okay. Is Android a good tablet OS? And I say yes, and you disagree. Why do you disagree?
I think it's a good tablet OS if your tablet is this big, because then it's a phone OS that's kind of big.
But that's the thing, is this is this big.
But this is a giant phone. So, it's like they can't build a tablet. They can build a pretty big phone and then like kind of get there, and they can like half step their way to that. And I just think all of these apps are like big phone apps. I actually think the browser Chrome on Android, like, it's really close to being the best browser ever, but it's not there. And it makes a lot of mistakes. It doesn't render.
It's certainly better than Safari.
It's sometimes better.
iOS.
I disagree with you.
Well, Safari,
as a mobile browser, Safari and iOS is still leaps and bounds.
It's good. It doesn't do very much, but it does its job.
Right, no, Chrome does all the cool stuff, right? It does all the syncing, it's like all the stuff that it does. But as a browser, in terms of like being fast and rendering pages, well, and that's like, I mean, those are big deals. And so like, I think on a phone, Android is great. And I keep saying over and over again, the only things that lock me into having an iPhone full time are AirPlay and iMessage, right? And the apps are like, they're good enough on Android phones where I'm not like constantly waiting, right?
But I mean, you just said yourself, this is just a big phone.
But this is just a big phone.
So
and I think
by your logic, why isn't that great?
Because the goal of a tablet should be to be your primary computing device, not just like here's a bigger screen.
We just completely disagree.
But that's like that's the aspirational goal of a tablet. So like
I don't think so. I think that's the aspirational goal of
most
the
tablets.
Big iPad. I don't think even the iPad Mini is trying to be your primary computing device.
I think a lot of people would tell you that the iPad, but it could be because it runs all the same applications, and that's incredibly powerful. I think if you are, all right. The people who ask me what tablet they should buy are really asking me like, what should my main computer be? When I like go home and like do computer stuff. Like I think nerds have a laptop.
I'm answering that question wrong.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you're talking to. But the people who are asking me, like, I think about my friends and family who have iPads. Most of them have full-size iPads, and they do not use other computers in their home. They just don't. They like have laptops. They don't like using them.
But so
they
you're
have
arguing,
Windows PCs. They don't like using them.
But are you just arguing against 7-inch tablets in general, or
no? I mean, I'm just saying the iPad Mini can like serve that role for a lot of
just
people.
Because it has the same apps.
Because it has the same apps and it's like powerful and the ecosystem's built out, and it's the iPad ecosystem, not iOS. The iPad ecosystem is building towards this can be a computer.
Right.
No, and I think that's incredibly powerful.
And I think
the Android ecosystem is building towards the best we can do is a pretty big phone. If you're any other Android phone manufacturer and you don't have like a PC line or something that you want to that's already shrinking, you have to stay the hell away from this because it's going to eat away at your phones. And I think that's like the truth about Android tablets right now.
I mean, business decisions aside, it's a really good device. Like I don't care
it's
whether
great.
they're going to make money off it or not. It's really good.
It has a really nice screen. I still don't know what your lock pattern is. It has a really nice screen, and definitely going to just erase this phone.
I got you.
I just call it a phone. Look, it has a really nice screen, and that's it. That's it. It's really thin. And the most expensive one is 32 gigs, has LTE, and it's $349.
And it's $20 more than the cheapest iPad Mini.
And I think that is incredibly powerful. I think that's incredible. Like, that's all great, but I think it's a mistake to say that Android is competitive on tablets when tablets spans a range of a bigger screen that I watch Netflix on to I'm going to replace my computer with this. And the Mini can theoretically do both. I ran out last year and bought a Nexus 7.
Yeah.
Was that last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
Jesus, time flies.
Which is now a piece, by the way.
It's a piece of junk, and I never use
really
it.
sad.
I mean, the only thing I like about it is that the back has that like dimpled leather pattern. That's nice. What are you telling people who got burned by that experience?
I mean, ultimately, that's like the price of progress. And Apple does really well. I said this in my review. Apple is the one company that does really well supporting its old products.
Yeah.
And I hope that this is good enough. And even if it's not, it's still going to be a great screen for watching.
How is it the price of progress?
I mean, any phone from a year ago is crap now. Like that's just how the world works. It's sort of unfortunate, but that's how it is. Like the last year of your phone contract, you hate your phone unless you have an iPhone. Like that's the rules. But so all right, so let's move on.
Rules?
So the other thing they announced, I actually think is in a way more interesting than this, is the Chromecast.
Sure.
So you've spent some time with the Chromecast.
I'm very fond of the Chromecast.
Which is interesting because you said the AirPlay and iMessage are the two things that keep you on iOS.
Yeah.
And theoretically, the Chromecast is supposed to fix that. So you reviewed that. We're going to watch that real quick, and then I have questions.
This is Neil with The Verge, and this is Google's Chromecast. The Chromecast is a $35 HDMI dongle that lets you stream video from laptops, tablets, and smartphones. And it works across Macs, PCs, Android, and iOS devices like the iPhone and iPad. The only complicated part of setting up a Chromecast is getting it power, and even that is pretty simple. Almost all TVs have a USB port that you're not using on them, and the Chromecast can just plug right into that. If you don't have a USB port on your TV, there's a small power adapter in the box. All in all, it's a tiny little bit more cable clutter than you might expect, but it's also one of the simplest setups out there. The only thing left to do once you've plugged in the Chromecast is either open the Android app or the setup page in Chrome on your PC, give the dongle a name, and configure the Wi-Fi connection, which takes just a couple minutes. You'll also be prompted to install the Google Cast extension in Chrome on your Mac or PC the first time through, but I get the feeling that'll all be built into Chrome very, very soon. Once you got everything set up, which took me just 5 or 10 minutes, using the Chromecast is ridiculously simple. Supported apps and services will display a little icon when they see the Chromecast on your network, and when you hit it, it'll tell the Chromecast to connect to that service and stream the video. Using Chromecast and apps like Netflix and YouTube is almost perfect. Since the Chromecast is streaming video directly from the web and not your phone, the video looks great, and you can switch to other apps and tabs on your phone or PC and keep working while the video is playing. There are some glitches. I found it pretty easy to confuse the Netflix app on my iPhone, and occasionally you find yourself sort of lost while a video is playing without any obvious way to control it, since you've closed a tab or switched apps. It's not the end of the world, but Google would be smart to build some basic controls into that Android Chromecast app and release a similar iOS app. The other problem is that right now the list of apps and services that support Chromecast is pretty short. It's Netflix, YouTube, and Google Play Music and TV on Android. That's it. Compared to something like Apple TV and AirPlay, that's a pretty sparse list. Google has a long way to go in convincing content companies to support Chromecast directly, although I imagine Google's working pretty hard on that, and I imagine those content companies are pretty interested in supporting Chromecast, since it's, at this point, the only viable competitor to AirPlay. But you don't have to wait for Google, really. You can also just stream any tab from the Chrome browser on a Mac, PC, or the Chromebook Pixel. That means you can stream pretty much anything to a Chromecast. I tried The Verge's homepage, Vimeo, Spotify, Rdio, ESPN, whatever I wanted, really. Clicking full screen on a flash video makes that player full screen on your PC and on the TV. The only things that didn't work were video players that rely on QuickTime, which is built by Apple. Dragging a video into Chrome from the desktop that played using QuickTime sent video but not sound. Streaming video from a tab isn't perfect, though. There are some clear stutters, the scrolling lags way behind your finger, and the audio and video can get out of sync, especially in bad connections. But it works, which is important, and Google says the feature is only in beta, so I'm really hoping it'll get better. And that's pretty much it. The Chromecast does what it says it's going to do, and it does it really well. It's the first device that's made it easy and desirable to put a web browser on your TV. And while there are definitely some glitches in places where Google needs to fill in the gaps, it's pretty good for $35. In fact, it's probably one of the best impulse purchases you'll make this year.
So Chromecast is kind of AirPlay minus a few things. Is that a fair summation of what's going on?
Yeah, it doesn't do audio only yet. It local file streaming is a little like interesting.
Yeah, I hear rumors that Plex is super interested in doing stuff with Chromecast, which would be super cool.
I mean, look, it's $35. I think people are going to buy them. They're selling out so fast they had to cancel their own Netflix promotion.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it?
Nailed it. Yeah, I was like the last person to get it. I was very excited.
I don't know if I got it. But look, I just think like there are going to be a lot of them out in the world and people are going to do interesting things with it. And right now at this moment, it actually works, which is for Google and a 1.0 product service. That's pretty impressive for them.
So, all right, so prove it. So we have a bunch of devices here and a Chromecast.
Yeah.
So it's basically as simple as like just pushing a button, right?
Yeah,
so
it's just the same as AirPlay.
So we have this with the Nexus 7 review, which is 9.0, 100% correct. What a smart guy. Whoever wrote that, genius.
Really.
So we can do that, and it starts playing, and then there's literally just a button, and it just does it. And this just appears, right?
Right. So this is now. So what you've done is you've told the Chromecast. You haven't sent anything from here. You just told the Chromecast to go get that YouTube video.
So the Chromecast is essentially it's Chrome. It's just running a browser.
Yeah, it's
right?
running. It's running YouTube now. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's cool. So if you stop that, and here's where it gets a little wonky. Is I've noticed that Chromecast gets confused a lot.
This is remarkable, by the way, is that it works across so many devices.
Across
That's the thing I'm really
device and
impressed by.
And I think you're going to see a real like API war between Google and Apple. Because I think Apple's going to really want
Has Google talked about theirs? Are they going to open it up and get?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Google's
look, I'm
thing,
running
I guess.
Netflix and iOS right now, and it works. Like, there's a Chromecast
with
button.
like a really sweet
let's-
instant queue going on over here.
Yeah.
Curious George.
My niece and nephew use my Netflix account. So let's do. I don't know. Here's Arrested Development. So I'm just going to play Arrested Development on my phone here, and it's going to be slow because Arrested Development is. No, it's fine. So I just push the button in the corner. And there it is, and there's our Chromecast. It's just playing YouTube. I've never actually tried to do this before.
A Chromecast is called Vergecast, by the way, which I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and it just switched over. So
you just
now,
hijacked mine completely.
Yeah.
That's what just happened.
So that's interesting. I'm going to make your life hell, Pierce.
Let me see.
So now it's loading Netflix straight from the web, and the phone, my iOS device, has turned into a controller, and it's going to just take a minute. I've noticed Netflix takes a minute longer than YouTube.
But so then theoretically, should I be able to control Netflix on there with this phone?
So if you open Netflix, well, no, because that's a different account.
Right, okay, but if we had the same account,
If
it
we had
would
the
see it
same
on this
account.
device and would pull it from there. Okay.
Right. So now this is playing Arrested Development behind me, and I can just like hit pause, and it'll take a second.
I mean, this is going to start
And pause,
like a lot of wars.
Yeah. Did it actually pause? It didn't pause.
Just gonna.
I've noticed this. Oh, there it goes.
And then I can just throw
You
some
can hijack
Breaking
your
Bad up there.
Netflix. Oh, so it's switching controllers. So like this is all very cool, and really what's happening is the Chromecast is doing most of the work, right? It's going out to the web, it's getting the content, it's requesting it.
And basically, what it's doing is it's running Chrome and Netflix at this point. Like it has apps baked into it, and it's
Well, it
just
has
using
Chrome.
Right. Okay.
So it's like it's doing Chrome stuff
Netflix.com
in there,
basically,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, without the browser Chrome and the UI and stuff. What it is missing is the other stuff AirPlay can do, where you've got an MP3 at your house and you just like stream it to the.
Right.
That stuff isn't there yet. Now it can do Google Play stuff, but that's still hitting the web in a way, and it can stream tabs from your computer, which is still in beta. And it's buggy. Like we've been trying to get this computer to work.
We'll just cast it.
Yeah, there it goes, and we'll see. So now it's playing Netflix. It's
I like that my options are cast this tab and stop cast.
There you go. Something should happen now.
It went black. That's either good or bad. Oh, look, it worked.
Yeah, it worked, right? So like you can do this. There's a little bit of lag.
It's like hours behind.
But it works. And so like, dude, for $35 for all of that to have just worked, kind of on the first go, and for us to like monkey with it as much as we did.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to buy the Chromecast.
Yeah. I mean, just to be able to do this, to be like, hey, I have this picture on my thing, I want everybody to see it, and just pop it on your TV is pretty cool.
So look, as an AirPlay competitor, I think it has a way to go.
So what do they have to? Yeah, what do they have to do to get there?
They've got a.
Because Apple kind of wins because it's all Apple, right? So they can just own it and
if you're
update
building
it
an
however
iOS app, you're going to put it in the App Store, and If it displays video, does audio, people are going to be like, where the hell's AirPlay?
Right.
So the demand is
And
there.
adding AirPlay is, as I understand, basically trivial.
It's baked into iOS, right? If you're a Mac developer, in Mavericks, there's going to be a lot more AirPlay support. So like Apple's like using this. They've known for a long time, and they've been pushing people towards AirPlay since they've launched it. Which actually, AirPlay started with just iTunes and the Airport Express, and like years before the iPhone came out. So like it's understood it's there. Google's in that position, right? They've put out a thing. They've got a dongle that works, and they've got to convince all their developers across Android and pretty much every web app that touches Chrome to start supporting it. And that's the fight they have. If they can get there, that's like really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And if they can get, Samsung and LG and Pioneer and whoever else and Sony to build Chromecast directly into TVs, which they're talking about doing, that's something else.
Right.
I don't think Google's gonna have that problem. I think all those companies make Android phones anyway. It makes the Android phone better. It's an ecosystem that works. So I think Chromecast has a ton of potential. I think for $35, you can buy 3 of them for the price of one Apple TV.
Right. Well, I just hope this makes Samsung and everybody else stop trying to make smart TVs.
No, it's not.
It won't, but it or at least put less emphasis on it, because what this does is all of the things that I need my smart TV to do, or at least this is sort of where it's headed. If they get, they need more content. That's the big thing. They need Amazon and Hulu and whatever else. But once they get that, it's just I'd rather use these as the remote and then just pop it on the TV. Like that's what we've wanted forever.
Right. I think what we've learned is that you need to keep the processor and the UI as far away from the TV as possible, and just send stuff to the TV.
And I'm sitting here with my phone watching TV all the time anyway. I don't have a problem using my TV as a remote.
Oh, so that is the one thing. Like you can, with the Chromecast, you can definitely end up in a weird world where it's doing stuff and you have no idea how to make it stop.
Yeah.
Like you set it a video and you hit close and what the hell do I do now? And it's there, you can do it. You just have to click on the right icon and do it. But it's not intuitive and there's no direct control of it. And I think that's a problem for them to just figure out how to solve. Like a Chromecast app on your phone that's just here's what the hell I'm doing. You can tell it to stop. I think that would be really useful.
All right, Neil, thank you so much. My Chromecast is coming. I'm excited. It's going to be great.
That'd be good.
All right, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back next Monday, and we will see you then.